Hey everybody. As we're moving in towards Holy Week, we're approaching Palm Sunday. I wanted to take some time today and tomorrow on two of the stories that lead up to Jesus' triumphal entry that we'll celebrate this coming Sunday. We're going to look at the book of Mark, and the two stories that lead into that I think are really important for us as disciples. So I want to take a look at those as best we can. Today we're going to be looking at Mark 10:35 and following, the story of James and John. Let's take a look at that text together. I want to read it for you. So it says this: Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him, to Jesus. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Bold question. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked. They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in glory. You don't realize what you're asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. When the 10 heard about this, the other disciples, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to lay down his life as a ransom for many. So it's interesting that James and John come to Jesus with this request. We want you to do whatever we ask. When you're talking to God, that's not a good way to start. But they do, and James and John, maybe of any of the disciples besides Peter, have a right to ask that. See, Peter, James, and John made a three-person inner circle of the 12. So you had kind of the crowds, the masses who were following Jesus, and then within that you had the 12 disciples. But within that you had Peter and James and John. These three had been with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. They'd been with Jesus throughout, and they were going to be really important moving forward as well. But it's interesting that they would say this, the two of them, because it almost sounds like they're trying to kick Peter out as Jesus' right-hand man. For whatever reason, anyway, they share this question and they ask Jesus for seats at his right and left hand. And the reality is what they're asking for is, Jesus, we want to be the best. We want to be the greatest. We want to serve you more than anybody else. And really what they're saying is we want the prize. We want to be known for being the best of the disciples. In asking this, they make it pretty clear that they really haven't understood Jesus all along. This is right before the triumphal entry, which leads us into the end of Jesus' life, his Holy Week, the last week of his life before the crucifixion, but then also the resurrection. So we find here that James and John just haven't understood all that they've been hearing from Jesus for 3 years. James, John, brothers. John, who winds up, he's a disciple of Jesus, but he also goes on to author a gospel, maybe author the first 3 books, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and maybe even the book of Revelation. But for now, it's obvious John, too, has missed the point. Give us glory, they say. We want to be the greatest. Jesus has talked about this all through his ministry. 3 different times he's used this term greatest. It's the word megas in the original Greek. And each time it's been to teach them a piece of what it means to be the greatest. It started when they said, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus says the greatest commandment is to love God and love others. If you want to be greatest in the kingdom of heaven, you begin by being loving. Then they come along, they say, Jesus, we want to be greatest. And Jesus takes a little child. He takes him and he plops him down in front of him and says, if you want to be the greatest, be like this child. Be humble. So far in his teachings, we see that Jesus says, if you want to be the greatest, you should be loving and you should be humble. And now we come to this moment when James and John come sneaking up to Jesus without the other 10, certainly without Peter, and say, we want to be the greatest. And Jesus says, look, if you want to be the greatest, you're going to have to be a servant to everyone. He says, that's what I'm doing, and that's what you need to do as well. So to be the greatest, to be the best in the kingdom of heaven, it means we need to be loving, humble servants of everyone around us. It flips greatness on its head because we think of greatness as being the one that everybody serves. That greatness is the one that everybody loves. That greatness is the one who doesn't have to be humble anymore because they're the greatest. But Jesus says, no, in the kingdom of heaven, everything's upside down. And that's the way it's supposed to be. If you want to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, you need to be loving, humble servants of everyone. So as we continue to move forward in this time, and we want to embrace that call in our lives, a couple of questions for you to ponder yourselves. One, how can you show love to someone today? If this is the end of the day, look back. How did you show love to someone? And if you have to work hard to make it up, then maybe tomorrow we should work a little harder so that the examples can just come to mind quickly. But how can we show love to someone today? Question 2, how can we be humble today? What are some ways that we can be truly humble, that we can truly understand our place among the world and put God first, and then put others above ourselves, and then put ourselves? Finally, the third question, how can you be a servant to someone today? That can be as simple as offering to do the dishes when it's not your turn, or it can be as deep as going out and buying groceries for someone who is in need. There's lots of opportunities for us to serve other people. But will we take it? And then final question is, are these things that mark things you do once in a while, or are these things that define you as a person? Being humble, being loving, being servants. Let's make that who we are rather than just what we do. All right, join us for worship Sundays at 10:30. This week is Palm Sunday. We get to celebrate, and hope that we'll see you then.